Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm honored to participate in this important forum on women's financial power and inclusion. Extensive research shows us that when women control their own money, their sense of self changes. And so do the expectations of those around them. Their children are more likely to attend school, their families are healthier. So we must also make sure that women are actually gaining power, because true equality depends not only on a woman's ability to access a livelihood, but also her ability to control it fully. When more women run central banks and control venture capital, we see better policies and more women-oriented businesses that will get investments to create the solutions we all need. So women are force multipliers. I like to say that when we invest in women, they invest in everyone else. So how can we accelerate financial inclusion and make women's economic power a global reality? That important question is why I'm excited today to speak with Maya Umar. She's an innovator and a leader in women's financial inclusion. She's making women's power a reality. And so I'm really excited about this conversation. Good to see you, Maya. I'm so glad we can do this.
Thank you so much for having me, Melinda. It's an absolute honor to be sharing the stage with you.
So let's talk a little bit about your own journey. Can you help the audience understand, how did you choose to get involved in financial inclusion in the fintech space?
Sure. So women economic empowerment is something that has been my passion forever. And I truly believe that when we invest in the economic development of women, we build direct paths to poverty eradication, to gender equality, and to greater economic inclusion. I was expecting my second child, and my employer, I found out, did not offer maternity leave. And so I had to leave that job. Which made me realize that here I am, an educated woman with many resources, and yet I've had to face this obstacle. So what about the other Pakistani women who have to leave their jobs and not be a part of the formal economy just because they're playing their natural role in growing families? And this is in addition to problems like, illiteracy and access and mobility issues. So the solution that I found to the problem at that time was Women's Digital League, which is a social enterprise that I founded in 2008, because I saw an opportunity for digital tools to become means of greater income generation for women. It's only when I joined OneLoad that I felt and believed that fintech was the way to go for me to support my values. So I joined OneLoad in January of this year, and it has been a very interesting journey so far because, when I joined initially, I experienced imposter syndrome, and I kept questioning myself, what am I doing at a fintech? But you see, it was interesting working for a business that was catering to the masses, but was also being intentionally inclusive of the overwhelming number of women that are unbanked in Pakistan. So it's been a really exciting journey.
I'm so glad you talked about what you faced yourself directly on this, having a child and not having any kind of support for that, because that's an issue we so often don't talk about around the world. And yet we're seeing it. I'm seeing it in my own country. We see it in country after country around the world, the unpaid labor that women do, and how you also just can't make it work if you don't have childcare. You can't take the job that you want. Talk a little bit about, you said, okay, making sure it's what inspired you to come and do the financial inclusion piece. Talk a little bit about account ownership. It's gone up, I've heard, 10% in Pakistan, which is good, but we're also seeing that in more like middle and high income countries, account ownership is going up by 30%. How do we address that gap for women? How do we get more women enrolled and using the service?
So we have some really interesting stats here. For example, 70% of Pakistanis own mobile phones, but only about 9% are banked. Similarly, if you look at the women, 75% of them have access to mobile phones, though they may not necessarily have ownership. And 80% of them have never used it for any digital financial services. Also in low income and rural areas where literacy is not at the desirable levels, we see that it's the men that manage households and income. Moreover, if you look at the conventional banks, they're also not interested in working with these low-income masses because, their low financial health and because, the effort it required to service them was not justified by the revenue that was earned. However, we have seen the Pakistani government take steps in the right direction here. For example, we have the National Financial Inclusion Strategy. We have the digital infrastructure that we need for building these digital services like digital IDs and interoperable payment systems. The conventional banks are also not, targeting these unbanked masses because of their inability to provide collateral and because they largely work in the cash economy. So it's really hard to assign them credit scores. So that's why they're high-risk customers for the banks. I believe that there's a lot of room for innovation and for creative thinking in this field.
Yeah, so can you explain with OneLoad, how do you all see that digital payment system? How do you see this as a business for you all, given that the banks aren't seeing it, but you all are?
Absolutely. So, when you have a population, 90% of your population that is either completely unbanked or underbanked, it provides a massive opportunity for everyone to find solutions to the problem, but also for businesses to come in and play their role in finding those solutions. The conventional banks are unfortunately not catering to these masses, as I mentioned earlier. So this is where fintechs come in, and we at OneLoad, we aim to lead here. We are a social enterprise that work on the principle of doing good and doing business. So we provide digital financial services to the poor, and we are also revenue positive. So what that really means is that we create retailers that work as intermediaries between the masses and the digital service providers. So we are essentially a B2B2C company, which sounds a little bit like an alphabet soup, but what it really means is that we empower our retailers with the most desirable digital financial services and products and features that they in turn pass on to their customers, which are the masses. I also want to, make sure that you understand what I mean when I say a retailer and what does a typical retailer look like for us at OneLoad. So this is a tiny 10 by 10 feet, mom and pop shop at the corner of a low-income neighborhood. There's no door to enter. There's just a shutter. And both the retailer and the customer, they stand and interact over a counter. And it sells goods like, eggs and bread and shampoo sachets, etc. So I just wanted to make sure that the word retailer really meant for you what it means for us and how it translates for us. Coming to the question of the women. So a lot of different organizations have tried to approach these women, but none has been able to really crack the code. We at OneLoad, we have also made many, efforts, for example, going door to door or approaching these self-grooming centers that are frequented by these women, but the response or the results weren't very encouraging. However, we do believe that, once we reach that magic 500 active female retailers number, the rest are going to follow a lot more easily. And this is based on our previous, experience with the male retailers. Some may say that it is impossible, but you see, this is where our partnership with you, Melinda, and with your foundation is so valuable to us because we're able to draw lessons from your experiences and find new ways and means and methods to reach these women and provide them with opportunities for economic empowerment. And I'm very proud and very happy to say that in the last few months, starting January to now, our female retailers have generated a throughput of over $70,000.
Wow.
And, with this small success, we're really looking forward to the future and placing the women at the center and thinking about new strategies. What can we offer her? Maybe overnight loans, maybe long-term working capital. So we're looking into all of these and exploring, and we're really excited about the future.
I love that you paint the picture for us about what does a small retailer look like, because we all have an image in our mind. I've seen these also in other countries across the globe. And I don't know, I want to ask you, I've heard from women that once they have their own digital bank account and they're actually making money and putting it in, they've said to me that everybody sees me differently. I see myself differently. My son sees me differently. My daughter sees me differently if I can pay her school fees. My husband sees me differently. In India, my mother-in-law sees me differently. And I think what I've seen is it brings women self-confidence. And then, as you said, if they can add on to their savings and start to get a line of credit or expand their business, we really are creating empowerment for women. I'm just curious what you hear when you're out talking to these female retailers.
Absolutely, just the same. That's what we hear all the time, and we have experienced it time and time again, not only with OneLoad, but just generally otherwise as well. Once a woman finds, a way to become, economically empowered or financially empowered, and also has agency, that's when we see this shift in her behavior and the behavior of society towards her. We see her self-worth come back and, grow, because everyone sees her as a useful member of society. So absolutely, those are just our experiences as well.
And just finally, can you share a little bit with the audience, how can they think about women's financial inclusion when they think of their business model? How should they think about that?
Absolutely. You can't create change. You cannot have economic growth if you leave out 50% of the population. That's just not possible. And that is why social enterprises are so important. They have, a double bottom line goal. They are, doing social good, and they are being revenue positive. So why not? At OneLoad, when we started, and although we were gender blind initially, just like everyone else says in the technology world, we soon found out that, we reached a saturation with the male retailer. We need the female retailers. We need them to participate in the economic growth of the country. And that's why we joined hands, a fintech company, with the development sector. So we are able to find ways on how we can make our, business more inclusive and be gender intentional. So without, involving the women and including them, we cannot have economic growth.
Well, Maya, thank you for joining me today in this conversation. I think it's so important for people to realize that when women have money in their hands, it creates agency, as you said, and empowerment. I love what you all are doing at OneLoad, and I hope there are many others in the audience who follow your example. Thanks for bringing this to light for all of us today.
Thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity.